Most players do not know the Gurgenidze system. It looks weird, but it's a strong setup against e4 and d4, and best of all, almost no one knows the theory. Let's break down this crushing line move by move. White starts with e4 as usual, and black responds with g6. After white plays d4, black responds by fianchettoing their bishop to g7. White probably thinks it's the modern defense. White plays knight to c3, and we calmly play c6. White tries to control space with f4, but we strike back immediately with d5. This is the Gurgenidze in action. We're going to let white overextend, then counterpunch. White pushes their pawn to e5, thinking they're winning space. Big mistake, we play h5, a move that shocks most opponents. Their knight develops to f3 while ours goes to the ugly h6 square, but this is all part of the plan. After white's most common move, bishop to d3, we develop our bishop to f5, putting pressure on their center. They castle kingside, but we're already preparing our next surprise e6, locking down the center. White tries to reposition with knight to e2 followed by bishop to f8. Yes, we're retreating our bishop, but this clears the way for our coming counterattack. White tries to stabilize with c3, but we undermine their center with c5. Their bishop comes to e3, but we pounce with our knight to g4, forcing trades that will wreck their pawn structure very soon. They play queen to d2, and we start trading with knight takes bishop on e3, queen recaptures, and we take the bishop on d3 with our bishop. Queen recaptures again, and we develop our knight to c6. Their knight hops to g5, playing for tricks. Too late, we place our rook on c8, this file is mine. After they capture our pawn on c5, we recapture with our bishop, checking their king to h1. Then our queen storms to b6, threatening their entire queenside. Look at this position, our pieces dominate and their big center is collapsing, all according to plan. When white tries to play safe, with bishop to e3 in the Gurgenidze, we punish them with a brutal queen-led assault. Here's how black turns quiet moves into a queenside nightmare. We immediately activate our bishop to f5 to develop and block their f-pawn from advancing. When they respond with bishop to d3, we unleash our secret weapon queen to b6. They play rook to b1 and we take their bishop on d3 with ours, forcing their queen to recapture. Now their queen is exposed and our knight leaps to f5, attacking both their bishop and the d4 pawn. White retreats their bishop to f2, but we calmly push e6, solidifying our center. They castle kingside, but we have a surprise, our bishop retreats to f8. Their knight jumps to e2 and we undermine the position with c5, challenging their pawn chain. White plays c3 to defend and block any knight jumps to b4 in the future, but we develop our knight to c6, adding pressure. When they take our c5 pawn, we recapture with our bishop. They take it with their bishop and we recapture with the queen. After the trades, our queen checks their king, so they block with the knight. Now we trade knights on d4 and move our rook to the semi-open c file. Here white has a hard time finding any decent moves to fight for the win, and once black's queenside pawns advance, one of our pawns will be able to pass, and white's game is over. Also in the Gurgenidze, we can play bishop to g4, which tends to cause more dynamic games. Their knight comes to f3, and we immediately pin it with our bishop to g4. Classic Gurgenidze, we love creating uncomfortable situations for white. White develops their bishop to e3, while we bring our knight to the unusual h6 square. Don't worry, this guy's heading to f5 where he'll be a real pest. They play bishop to e2, solidifying things, while we calmly reinforce with pawn to e6. After white plays queen to d2, preparing long castle, our queen's knight now comes to d7. This flexible piece might swing to b6 or f8 later. White castles queenside, so we immediately start our attack there with pawn to b5. This is where the Gurgenidze gets fun, we attack where their king lives. They try to break our pin with pawn to h3, and we happily trade our bishop for their knight on f3. Now their bishop recaptures to keep their pawn structure. Our h-pawn keeps marching forward to h4. This little guy is going to cause all sorts of problems. White retreats their bishop to f2, and we pull our bishop back to f8, might reposition it later. Their knight retreats to e2, but we've got a great square. Our knight jumps to f5, putting serious pressure on their position. White lashes out with pawn to g4, but we take it with our h-pawn, opening the h-file for future operations. Their knight recaptures on g3, but we've got another great knight move hopping into h4 where it eyes the bishop. They retreat their bishop to e2, and we reposition our queen's knight to b6. This piece is eyeing both c4 and a4. Their king takes a step back to b1, and we seize the opportunity. Our knight leaps into c4, becoming a monster on that square. This piece is now threatening all sorts of things in their camp. Finally, their queen retreats to c1, and we push pawn to a5. Expanding on the queenside and preparing to open more lines against their king. What a position! We've got active pieces, multiple avenues of attack, and white's king is looking mighty uncomfortable. And white is having a hard time finding any fighting moves. This is the Gurgenidze at its best, flexible, dynamic, and full of counterplay.